It's Friday, August 18th, 2023. Segment up front, which is patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare. You can also go to the show homepage, and on the right side, there is a vertical row of rounded square blocks that have different images. Actually, hold on. I always mention only a few of them. What are the other ones? Oh, okay. The first one is the PayPal link. That's the one that's got two P's overlaid. Then there is a Patreon link there as well, if you don't want to remember the address. There's the Zazzle store, which I've got to tell you barely has anything on it. But if anybody ever wants me to add something, I will. I may at some point just take that off because I don't think anybody's bought from it in a long time, which is fine. The little book with a bookmark will take you to Lando's Amazon author page where you can buy his books. There is a skull that will take you to my link tree with all the different art stuff I do in different outlets because there are far too many for me to list them at the beginning of a show. And at the very bottom is the YouTube link to our YouTube channel, where you can watch, let's see, I put the art streams I do on there. So those are up weekly. The video game videos are there. Time lapses that I do, those are more infrequent. It just depends when I have one that's worth posting. So that stuff is all. And the shows do post there. The shows do now automatically post to YouTube, which reminds me, because Twitter, I'm not calling it another name, it's fucking Twitter. Twitter has decided to just be a piece of shit all over now. So our shows do not post on Twitter anymore, and there's no way that anybody can figure out how to fix it, and I'm not going to do it manually because fuck that platform. I mean, I'm not going to do any effort for it. If he wants to ruin it, fucking ruin it. So you can go watch them on YouTube, which I'm not going to do animated backgrounds or anything like that for them. Some shows do. I'm not going to because most people, you're not going to care. Most of the YouTube stuff I listen to that's audio-based, I don't care what's in the background. I'm listening to it behind a window. So I'm not going to do that. I have a nice piece of poster art, or show art there, so you can look at that. The 5-minute ones, what do you care about a video anyway? What would I do with 5 minutes?
You don't want to do like a Ken Burns thing where the picture slowly moves?
I honestly, I probably will.
No, hold on. What? I have the best thing you could do.
Oh, God, here we go.
Yeah, okay.
I will admit.
There's no nudity in this unless you want to. You remember that Nick Offerman did the Yule log where he literally sat?
Yes. Yep.
And it was for wasn't it 10 hours, something ridiculous?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
Wouldn't it be funny if it was just a video of you sitting in a chair, just looking?
Well, I had a thought that it would be because this way I wouldn't actually have to do anything. I was thinking of recording a video of me with the microphone so in front of the camera that all you would see is my eyes. Yeah. And I would just, so as if I was talking, but the microphone's blocking you from seeing my mouth. And I would just kind of look left and right randomly and then loop it forever.
Yeah, there you go.
But I don't think anybody cares.
I know. It's just, listen, it's just the silly details.
The effort I do is in the openings for the video game.
You know what?
Episodes.
I don't watch,
that's the effort.
When what is it? Yeah, I know.
That's the effort.
When I've watched, who the fuck is that guy? The guy that everyone gets pissed about. Who interviewed?
Okay. That's a long list.
The guy from Fear Factor. What the fuck's his
name?
Oh, Joe Rogan. Yeah, whenever I've watched a few of the Joe Rogan shows, and I don't, like I said, I've only watched a few, usually because there's people I want to see, like Eddie Izzard and things like that, and Bill Burr. I never watched them. I put them on, and then I go do shit.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's what I'm
Like they're
saying.
really just on.
That's
Yeah.
almost all of them. Like Andy Last, who does Beyond Synth, who there will be a late night with him and Marco Merrick in probably a few months. And he now puts his shows on YouTube, and he does all this work where when he's talking, it shows a picture of him, and then when it's not him, he shows the picture of the other. And I feel bad because I looked at it for about a minute, and I went, okay, this is all this is.
Are there people who sit and stare at that?
I think, I don't know. I can't imagine.
To each their own, but yeah.
The only thing I can think, I'll be honest, there's one situation where it somewhat makes sense, which is if you have it on, let's say, a monitor, like if you put it on your TV, let's say you're drawing or you're doing something and you want to put it up on your TV on YouTube and put it max size, it would help not burn in the screen. So there is a benefit for that one use case, which is moving images are going to be better on a TV. So if somebody's listening to it through maybe their speakers, because not everybody has multiple speakers in their house. Some people, everything is through the TV. They have a nice sound bar.
Man. You know what you should totally do? That would be hilarious.
What?
The next time you do one of your Bob Ross paintings, you should set up a camera.
So I've thought about it.
It just shows the painting slowly progressing, and then just slow it down to the time of the video.
Here's the biggest problem that prevents that is I don't know how I would build a rig that wouldn't have me in the shot or would be angled, because what I'd want to do is
do it like animation. Is it basically like paint for 2 minutes, paint for 5 minutes, take a photo, paint for 5 minutes, take a photo, and then just let it slowly if you take enough
photos, I
I
actually have considered, I'll be honest with you, is a body camera. I've considered buying a little cheap body camera and putting it on like the center of my chest.
Oh, I bet you did, bestie.
Well, not for that, but because people have asked me, they're like, "Oh, I'd love to see a video of what you doing the art," and I'm like, "Well, the stream lets you do that because it's on an iPad, so that's the easiest way. That's the most clear, no frills way to do it." But people have said, "Oh, your paintings, we'd like to see how you do the paintings," because a lot of people. They still, and honestly, I've said this to many people, I'll say this forever, is the Bob Ross thing is the best for anybody who thinks they can't paint. You absolutely can paint. You can.
I have heard that is a thing, because there are, sometimes when I see people who do Patreons and things like that, they'll be like, oh, well, if you do this membership, you get the pictures that I draw, and then you also get the video of the drawing progression, and I'm like,
well, there is a way to do it. There's people.
I know, but the thing is, I don't have an interest in that, and that's why I'm trying to understand, like.
Oh, I think people really enjoy the process. No, people really enjoy, and I do too. I do too. As far as I've said to people who are musicians, especially when they're doing work with like the analog stuff, and they're like doing taping and like distorting tapes. I'm like, man, I'd love to see what that, because I can't understand. I can't wrap my head around. I told this to Doug when I did the thing with him, which will be the next late night. I said, I don't know how you compose. I don't know how you come up with the first idea. And he's like, well. How do you come up with a sketch? Well, I'm like, oh, well, I know how I do that. And he's like, well, it's the same thing. And I'm like, I know it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing to me because I can think visually. I can't think musically.
Hey, this is what I said to you the other day, that I envy your skill in art because you can produce a visual image of what's in your head.
Yeah.
Whereas I can describe places, I can describe situations, but I can't actually produce it for you. All I can do is insinuate the possibility of it in your brain. Then you have to see it,
I also don't know that I want people to see how I actually draw, because my process, I guarantee you, is so bad in terms of the way it should be done. Meaning, and I don't mean should as in there's only one way to create art. That's not what I mean. I know for a fact that there are more efficient and more beneficial ways to do drawings than I do. That I've seen people do. Every time I see it, I go, that would actually make it a lot easier for me. Yeah, but I never do it.
Yeah, but that makes no sense, because there is no ideal way to create.
No, there's
art.
not. But what I'm saying is, I struggle. One of the things I struggle with is proportions on faces. I've always struggled with it. I always have a problem with it. One of the reasons that the iPad's so great is that I end up doing 80 versions of it until I can get it right. And I literally sometimes have to I hold the iPad up next to the monitor with a picture of someone's face on it, so that I can literally just on the screen do quick, because I just can't, get it.
But that's the thing. Every artist of any type, music, visual arts, writing, everything, sculpting, everybody has their hang-ups. Everybody has things that they have trouble with. And everybody has to figure out their own personal workaround. If it was formulaic, everybody would do it. You know, we do it because we're drawn to it. We're pushed towards it. You know, like, listen, my writing process is not the other people's process. I'm very auditory. I like to read lines over and over again. There's a point where they sound right to me. It's one of the reasons why I don't like to write around other people, because I come off. I dare call it. It's almost what's the word? It's almost like I'm on the spectrum when I write. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Oh no,
it's
no. Listen, if people were to see how my drawing thing would seem to be classic ADHD, because I bounce between things so manically.
Oh,
so,
you know what?
I know what
you should. Have you? Well, I'll get to that, the sculpting thing in a second.
Go ahead.
But yeah. So like, if I'm writing a paragraph, right? At least 2 sentences out of that paragraph, I will repeat like 10, 20 times, because especially if they're wrong. So I'll read the paragraph, and like there's a moment in there where it sounds right, where it has the right, it just feels right, it sounds right, you know. And then it's like, okay, and that's why very often I usually write my dialogue first, depending on what kind of scene it is. Then I go back and I lay all the narration out of what they're doing, and then I go back through again and I make it all sound right, and then I walk away for a couple days, and then I come back and I do that again, like through the whole thing, make it all sound right, put more things in, and I'll look at the same piece like, so you read the first part of my new book, the first third of it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Which don't expect to read it anytime soon, guys. It's going to take forever to write that thing. But I revised that at least 100 times before you saw it. At least 100 times I reread that whole thing and read most of it out loud, and it just becomes like like you almost feel like you there is an OCD about it, but you know when it's right. You know when it feels right. You know when you've gotten to the point where
my
you're like,
streams have multiple examples where I redraw the same line 8 or 9 times. In what for most people they'd go, I don't see the difference. And I'm like, yeah, but I do.
Well, have you ever heard, speaking of like jumping around, have you ever heard of a YouTube channel called North of the Border?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
He specifically has these videos called Tiny Nerdy Things.
Yes.
And what he does is he basically makes little ridiculous sculptures from like essentially like not Fimo, but it's a heat-based clay, right?
Yeah. I never watched the video, but the Elephant Mario one, I remember making.
My daughter.
Oh, and the Choo Choo Charles as the spider. I didn't realize that was him. Yes, that's the one that I've seen a lot.
Daughter loves Fimo, loves working with Fimo, so we started watching his videos. And her favorite is the T-Rex with flamethrowers. If you haven't seen these, I actually find them quite soothing to watch.
I'll put a link.
Because like, you know, you're saying he goes through the process. His process is very amusing because you're kind of watching it, and he acknowledges the fact, much like yourself, that he's all over the place. He doesn't really have a plan, but he also seems to just feel it and know what he's doing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And they always come out fantastic. Like he did his what would a Lego person look like in real life? That one was horrifying. He does a lot of stuff that's like borderline horror.
The realistic Bert and Ernie one is terrifying.
Oh my god, yeah, that one he did the
realistic
monster
Kirby
fruit
is awful.
Yes. What was the other one he did? He did a great
God,
white...
Simpsons. Ugh.
Yeah. They are so great to watch, and they're short. They're never like more than like 15, 16 minutes long. I can't remember if they've even gone beyond that, but you know, it's the thing you said. It's the whole, he jumps all over the place where he's like over here and he's over there. And he even says, he's like, you know, if you guys think that I'm not focusing, he's like, guess what? I'm definitely not focusing. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's like, cause that's the no one does it the same. Some people are like wild and nuts and go all over the place. Some people are methodical. Some people have a system, you know, but the same thing never works for everybody. It's just, the only consistency is inconsistency. So
there's a person I wish she would do a YouTube channel of the stuff that she does, but she makes miniature. God, what are they? How would I even describe what these things are?
Yes.
She does miniature. Like, okay, I'm going to commission her at some point. It's just it's a bunch of money.
Miniature what? You're killing me here. What does she make?
Like I'm trying to video stores. Well, it's not just video stores.
Oh
like
no, I've seen that. Like little rooms.
Yeah. And she'll say, okay, what are your favorite movies? And you put them in there, and she puts them in there.
Yeah, and like there's one where they do that with books, where they make books that when you look at them, they look like miniature libraries.
Yeah,
and you put them in yeah. Those are really, really cute.
Yeah, she's really good at it, but she doesn't do commissions that often, so I'm waiting for the next...
You know what I find? Writing a heartfelt letter.
Oh no. It's not that. She has a certain amount that she can do a year.
Oh,
so
okay,
she doesn't. No, it's not a thing where she won't do them.
That's the other problem is that people who are really that good, their dance card gets filled up. Yeah.
Yep, it does.
So it's like, you're not gonna, unless you've got some kind of like real money,
Right.
This goes back to the whole, how many artists would you support if you were like filthy rich?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Here she is. Yeah, Mecha Minis is her Instagram name.
Hold on a second. So MECA.
I just sent you. Oh, geez. See if that works. See if that link works.
Mecha
I don't
Minis.
know if it's going to. But I think that's
it works.
Look
at this. This is so cool.
Yeah, see her little.
Oh, she does little.
Yeah, she does everything. She did a little street trash, which I'm almost like, all right, I'll take one of those.
That's so funny. I love the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
God, Instagram sucks.
See,
so much.
I meddled with this. I mean, not me personally, but I encountered some of this because when I was younger and I collected, years ago, I collected 12-inch figures, like 1/6 scale figures, and that bumps right up against the diorama people who build like these 1/6 scale environments, and they're amazing. The shit that they do. Yeah. I no longer collect 1/6 scale figures. I've moved on to,
there is somebody who I may, because you gave me those robots.
Oh, yeah.
And he does custom weapons, so I may have him make like a blade chainsaw type thing for one of them.
Yeah, one of the last things I did when I was getting rid of my collection, I sold my collection because I realized that I was... Do you ever get that? You get to the end of a thing where like you've collected a bunch of it and like you just realize that it no longer brings you any joy.
Yeah, I did that with my Zippos. My Zippos are basically gone now.
Yeah. So like, and the thing was... So I got to the end of that, and my wife was like, well, what are you going to do with it? Because you have this ton of these things. And I was like, you know what? It's like, I used to use them as writing prompts. It used to be really helpful, but like I don't need that anymore. So what I did was I literally just sold the entire collection all at once. But the last thing I did was I pulled these robots out, and I gave them to Joe because I figured you would like them. And those guys are vaguely 1/6 scale, but they're fucking awesome. The only one I only kept 2 of those 1/6 scale figures. I kept one, which I commissioned a woman to make a figure of one of the characters that I used to write with in the Chatsubo, which was oh my god, how the hell to describe the Chatsubo? Was a cyberpunk.
Yeah, it was a cyberpunk writing forum or something, wasn't it?
Writing forum, yeah, like in the. Oh, Jesus Christ. What year was that? It was sophomore year of college for us. The Chatsubi.
Late 90s, 2000s.
Yeah, there you go. I had a great character. I loved the character, and he was a child who was much older in mind, but he'd stopped aging, and so I had a figure made of him. And oddly, I kept a really nice Motoko Kusanagi Ghost in the Shell figure. And so now, whenever I move my bookcases around, or when I move now, the two of them are always together, and I always have them like I kind of use them as like statues now. I always have them posed someplace, usually like high in a bookcase, and it always looks like she's protecting him because the expression they did on her face is very sort of like, cautious and watching, and it's just so weird because it in a weird way it always keeps me connected to that period in my life where I was writing on this forum and it was so much fun, and it just, writing was fun. I don't know what I'm talking about. Writing is always fun. It's just rare that I write with people. I mean, honestly, when's the last time you drew with somebody?
Well, that's what the painting with my wife. That's the closest, but never.
No, I know. I've been like actually producing
never.
A single image together.
No, I've never done that probably since college.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Yeah, well, we had to.
Yeah.
And that's what was so neat. So, but I don't even know how you got on the topic of that. Anyway.
Oh, because you were talking about the
dioramas.
YouTube show.
Yeah,
Because of
dioramas.
YouTube with the show. So YouTube is so the shows are on YouTube. If you want to listen to them through it, that's where. So then there ends the shill segment. So yeah, that was all a long roundabout way of doing the shill segment.
By the way, are you recording the our new playthrough of Saints Row?
I'm going to. I because we haven't played for long yet, so no. But I will because
curious.
I want people to see that. So that's actually a good segue into our into a video game segment, which gives me an excuse to do this. I have no reason to play that song.
You know what? Hold on. Don't tell anybody what that is.
No, I'm not going to tell.
Because if someone knows that sound,
someone's going to know that sound.
Email. No, I'm so curious. If you don't look it up,
yeah, that's fine.
Don't look it up. If you know off the top of your head what that sound is,
someone will. Of course, people know that sound.
Email Joe. I'm so curious.
I will keep this as vague as possible. That sound is related to one of the most popular elements of an extraordinarily popular series. That's all I'll say. That is one of the best known.
Vague.
That is from one of the best loved parts of something. So somebody will know it. Maybe not everybody, but somebody will know it.
I'm curious if they do.
They'll know.
It's weird. It's weird the things that bleed in, you know?
It is.
But sorry, you were saying video games?
So I wanted to bring up a game that is not necessarily new and that I wrote off for years because I remember when I saw the trailer for it, it didn't look interesting. It looked like just another sci-fi shooter and it looked bland and uninteresting. When the reviews came out, I think they were mixed and a lot of people made it sound like it was a very difficult game. So I was like, so I kind of wrote it off. But for some reason I have it. I must have bought it either dirt cheap or maybe at some point it was a promotional thing or whatever. But I've gotten into watching, speaking of YouTube again, there's a person who does a series of very long-form game reviews, and is the show's title, or the channel's title is The Nth Review. Now, normally, because there's like several tangents on this, the first one is, normally I hate when somebody uses nth for something. It's like when people are like, take it to the next level, or the nth. I'm like, or the nth degree. I'm like, oh, fucking shut up! I can't stand it.
Isn't that just the 9th degree?
No, nth is almost an intangible. Let me see. Is there a definition for what nth is? Here it is.
You know what?
Here it is. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah?
You just reminded me of something I wanted to share with you, which has to do with the impossible and the bizarre.
No.
You know how people always see Jesus all over the place?
Yes.
Where they're like, oh my God, I saw Jesus in toast.
Sure.
Dude, I saw Cthulhu today on the side of my coffee cup. Speaking of like the 9th degree, I have this coffee cup that's faulty, and every time you drink, it drips down the side. And I finished my coffee, and I put it down, and I looked at it, and I swear to you that it was like the spitting image of Cthulhu.
I wonder if this is now that you're back in weird New Jersey, if you're starting to get influences.
And I said to my wife, I was like, well, what the fuck is this a sign of? I was like, everybody else is seeing fucking Jesus and the Virgin Mary and all this crazy bullshit. I was like, I get Cthulhu in my coffee cup? I'm like, it just made me think, like, that's like the beginning of like a bizarre comedy about the end of the world, right? Cthulhu
and what insolvent country do you come from?
New Jersey. I'm just a weirdo.
Yeah, that's what that is.
I almost took a picture.
You should have. I take pictures of stuff like that. I actually do because I think I might draw it. So I always take pictures of weird tiles and bathrooms and stuff like that.
I still have the cup. If it does it again, I'll let you know.
Yeah, you should.
But I mean, it was so funny because it was like, you know what? It must be the things that you're looking for, because that's the thing. Religious people are looking.
I looked down and I saw what was clearly splattered acrylic paint, and what I saw was a gorilla with most of its skin stripped off, and I drew it. I actually made the image out of it. I had it as a comparison piece, and I drew what looks like a humanoid gorilla with most of its skin peeled off, and you can see the muscle and blood underneath, because that's what it looked like to me. So
interesting.
I don't know that I was looking for a skinned gorilla.
Well, next time Cthulhu visits my morning coffee, I will. I'll let you know. Anyway, sorry. You just take 9th degree. I was thinking.
So nth is an adjective meaning relating to an unspecified ordinal number, relatively large but unspecified, or last
Got it.
or greatest in an indefinitely large series. Anyway,
Got
I
it.
hate that word most of the time. But, which I didn't even realize it was an adjective, but I guess it makes sense that it would be. However, I stumbled across this review series because he was talking about Deus Ex, and I'm a sucker for Deus Ex. And so then I started, and the videos are very good. They're hard to define why they're good. I think it's just because he has a very...
You know what? Sometimes people have just a really soothing kind of documentary approach, because there was a guy who did a really neat breakdown of one of the Radiohead videos, right? And sure. I remember that it wasn't even particularly a video that I was fond of, but I was kind of curious, like, you know, what are you going to describe? And it was like a 20-minute video about about this music video, this like 5-minute music video. And I actually was like, you know what? It is his manner was very soothing. The way he set it up was really well done. I was like, damn. I was like, you know, when you watch something like that and you think, I don't feel like I wasted 20 minutes of my time. Like, I actually feel somewhat relaxed and enriched.
Well, in this person's case, his videos, if they're 40 minutes, are extraordinarily short. They are generally 2 to 5 hours.
Wow.
So, yes, I don't generally watch them all in one shot. For example, the Thief video, which I will be watching at some point, is 5 hours and 14 minutes and 10 seconds.
Thief. Jesus, That takes me back.
The king of stealth gaming. So he did one on System Shock, and then he did one called the System Shock, because I really love the System Shock stuff now that I've learned the more of what went into it and what it's inspired than the games themselves. However, the System Shock remake is quite good, although I must warn anybody who looks at it, it is just over the line, not enough to make it bad, but just over that line where older ways of playing video games don't work anymore. It is just enough to be annoying at times, but that's okay. I still like it. Where it literally guides you to nothing, which I don't need hand-holding, but sometimes it's nice to have a map marker. And it's like, nope. It expects you to write things down as you're doing.
I think every game that wants to appeal to a wide market should always have some kind of, okay, I've had enough of this mode. Because
yes, I wouldn't mind putting an option on. Yeah.
Arkham Knights had this thing where you had to, like, be a detective and discover stuff. And, like, there were times where we're like, okay, I'm really not in the mood for this. So just tell me what it is so I can get on with the rest of the game. You know, and it's like, and maybe that's just lazy, right? But, like, we all want different things. Yeah, we all want different things from games.
To me, the game should always have the game. Now, of course, I'm speaking as somebody who doesn't make games. But if I was a game developer, I would always consider my perfect version of the game to be the middle setting. And then I would say, okay, I will allow you to make it 2 levels easier and 2 levels harder. And that way, if it's not challenging enough, knock yourself out.
Sniper Elite has that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sniper Elite has one of the best models, I think, for setting up difficulty in game.
No, it's great.
You can make it really, really easy.
However, in fairness,
and you could make it astonishingly difficult.
You can, but that's the benefit of using your own engine. You get a lot more. It's a lot easier to modify something you made yourself. A lot of times developers are using things so that they don't have to build it from scratch. So I understand that. And I'm not saying that it has to be Sniper Elite level, because that is a high level of granularity, and I understand why not every game can achieve that. That's fine. However, it would be nice to have a little bit of variation, even if it's just enough to say, you know, because there are games that will let you turn off things like a map or a HUD so you can't tell what your health is at outside of, you know, trying to keep track. That's fine. I don't mind that. You know, you can want to make your game harder. You should also be able to make it a little easier. But that being said, System Shock was a game that was designed to be, it birthed the immersive sim game. Really did. That was the idea that this is trying to replicate what reality would be. That's where it just throws you into something and expects you to figure it out with no handhold.
But as long as you understand that's what you're getting into, then it works, right?
Right. Which is why the remake, which is largely the same as the other one, is a little bit, at times I'm like, okay, I need to step away from this game for a little while, so I'm on a break from it. And so I was watching these videos because I love the background of it, and I love the Deus Ex and all that stuff. And he had a video that showed the picture of a game called Prey, which I remember it coming out, and it looked really pretty.
I vaguely remember that game.
Yeah, no, it was a big thing when it came out, and then it kind of just went nowhere.
Is that a nanotech game?
Well, sort of. That's the other thing. The trailer was a little bit not deceitful. I think that they focused on an element that wasn't quite what the game had, which was the trailer made it seem like it was a Groundhog's Day style game where you kept reliving the same day, which is a genre that exists. Games like The Outer Worlds is that, where it's 20 minutes of gameplay and then you blow up. 20 minutes of gameplay and you blow up. And what you're doing is every 20 minutes you're trying to figure out more about what's going on. So you are building a database of what's going on, but you die every 20 minutes and reset. So those games are...
What's the other one, too? There's one that's you reliving the same day you're on the island.
Yeah, what game is that? There's several now.
That's a recent one, too.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of that one, but yes, I know the game you're talking about. Yeah, so that's a style of game, the kind of recurring, restart game. That's fine. So that's what the trailer made, and I think that's another element where I went, I'm not interested in that style of game. Thank you very much. But then I watched his video, which is 2 hours and 15 minutes or so, on Prey and what it's doing, and I went, oh, no. This is exactly my kind of game, because you and I, one thing we like to do is find the barriers that the game doesn't want you to cross and then try to cross them. And Prey is made for you to do that the whole game. It doesn't care what you do. It is structured so that you can try to do as much as you want any way you want. To the point where there are systems that it doesn't tell you at all about. There's one that I don't think it would have even occurred to me, that there's a point where you play a video on this video wall and you can move around, and the room moves. You know how in Blade Runner when they zoom in you can suddenly see to the left of the wall, even though that makes no sense on a photo?
Yes.
Okay, it's that, where if you're watching the video and you move to the left, now you can see more of the room on the right. Now, normally when I watch videos and games, it's not like that. So I don't know that I would have really done much with that. But in his video, he pointed out, he's like, well, there's a safe that you're looking for the combination for. And in the room, in the current time, when you're in the room, it's been erased because either somebody brushed up against it or they erased it. But the video's being played before it's erased. So if you go far enough to the right and you look over, there's the whiteboard with the combination. But the game doesn't tell you that. If you never move to the right, you're never going to see it, but it's there.
Yeah, so the more you fuck around, the more you might find stuff.
Yes, and then another thing he pointed out was pay attention to how vertical the rooms you are, because you can actually go all the way to the top of them. And you have to do, I was sitting there's a gun that fires these globs of hardening foam. It's called a glue gun, but GLOO. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And now every time I'm in a room, if I can see like pipes, I'm creating a staircase and seeing if there's something up there. And about 30% of the time there is. Sometimes there isn't. But that's also the beauty of it is, okay, it's a game where the systems exist for you to fuck with. They are fuck with me systems. Which is like my dream game. I sat there and played it for 3.5 hours at one point.
You don't have to fuck with it, but if you fuck with it, you get more.
No, and to your point, it does have the modern things where you can turn off map markers. If you truly just want to wander and have no guiding, beacon on the map or whatever to show you, you can turn it off. And it can go into that mode where, and I might actually do it because I've had so much fun I've spent 30 minutes, no exaggeration, in one set of rooms, just trying to decide whether there's something I haven't found. Then at one point I went outside. It gives you a spacesuit. And I went outside specifically to go find a key card on somebody who'd been caught in a explosive decompression. So their body was outside.
Now, or pieces of them were outside.
Well, they froze. They didn't.
Okay.
The decompression sucked them out. It didn't blow them up. So they're just hanging there, completely frozen and decayed, or not decayed, but like you could tell that they dried out. You know what I mean? They're desiccated, I think is the better word. But in space, it's kind of a preservative, I guess. You don't really, because there's no air, so I don't think you ever oxidize. I guess you just sit there forever, slowly decomposing.
Well, you just
but in the
freeze.
cold,
well,
so
no,
you decompose slow.
You freeze or you cook.
Right.
Actually, is what
well,
happens,
this person froze. This person did not cook. So I went out, and I'm kind of maneuvering. And it's also, when you're out there, it is in total 6-axis freedom. So I was getting upside down a lot and going, wait, whoa, where am I? And those markers aren't on by default. So you can and I did. I left them off. I'm like, no, this is kind of neat. I want to just see if I can orient myself because, I'm terrible with directions. So I'm like, okay, there's a planet over there. I'll just remember there's a planet to my left so I can orient myself to this planet. So I went over, I got to the guy, and I got his key card. And I was heading back, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Can I just keep going? And so I then spent 20 minutes slowly because I don't have really good thrusters on the backpack, but I'm just moving around outside this space station. And for most of it, there was no barrier to me doing it. And then I happened to come around a corner and there was this giant space thing and it was like, blah, 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 and it like shot me and I fucking died. And I'm like, okay. And then I found a gun. I found this giant, what looked like a Jesse Ventura, Predator gun, except laser. And I'm like, all right, fuck it. Let me see if I can take this thing on. And honestly, I'm pretty sure I could have if I had more ammo. But I ran out of ammo a couple of times. I'm like, fuck, I'm just short. Because I can't get close to it. It's too big. But this thing can hit from a distance. So now at some point, my goal is to upgrade the gun and go back out there.
What you're describing, to some degree, reminds me of early Fallout 76.
Yes, except there's a story in this one.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, they took it a step further, right? No story needed. Just wander.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, you can wander in this, but there's a story for those who want it. I mean, I guess you could. I don't know. You couldn't really turn the story off, but I wanted to mention it because I spent years saying I'm never going to play this game. Yeah. Like I said, I don't even know why I have it. It must have been promotional because I'm pretty sure I never bought it. So it must have been a giveaway or, buy a bundle or whatever, because I've done those at times and you get games even if you never play them. So maybe it's something from that. But I happened to see it. And then when I watched this video, I'm like, holy shit, man. This is the sandbox game that we always like doing, is what can we do that the game doesn't want you to do? And this game is basically says, go ahead and try.
Well, in some degree, yeah. They designed the game soberly. They said, okay, we know there's going to be gamers who fuck around, so let's give them something to play with. Right? I mean, that's to some degree the idea. So, that's good. That's good. I mean, what year is Prey? I mean, I remember
2018? So 5 years ago?
Yeah. So it's not a new game.
No. And I mean, but it looks really good. Because the thing with Arcane games is they tend to be stylized anyway. That's actually something I think that studio does very. Like, they did the Dishonored games. And I think where they're smart is, except for their latest game, I don't believe they were allowed to develop that independently. There seems to be a lot of back end kind of interruption and interference going on with Redfall. But all their other games, Dishonored, Prey, and then there's one other one which of course I'm forgetting. What else did Arcane do? But they're very, very stylized, which allows them to not have to worry so much about competing with, it's lifelike graphics. Well, if everything is over, especially Dishonored is very stylized.
This has always been the World of Warcraft approach. It's the whole it's not it's stylized. It's a cartoon. Therefore, we don't need to make it look like real life, and you'll accept it because it's a cartoon.
Right. Oh, Deathloop was the other one they did, which had a very kind of 60s, 70s sci-fi spy aesthetic to it. That was a more modern one. So that's the case with Prey too. Although Prey, it has a thing where the station is rotating and the shadows do rotate. So you actually see, if you just look down, you'll notice it. I really didn't notice it for a while. Then I happened to be in a room and I noticed the shadow. I thought it was an enemy because the mimics are the big enemies of the thing and they can take the form of anything. So there's this level of paranoia to every room you enter, because literally a tissue box or a lamp pole or something could be a mimic. It could be a alien that's imitating it, thing style. And so anytime you walk in there, you just destroy everything. You just start fucking bashing every fucking thing that's loose on a desk. Like, I'm hitting every tissue box. I'm smashing monitors, all kinds of shit, because you get a sneak attack bonus if you catch them.
No, I love it. It's just the game inspires you to be psychotic. You walk in a room, you're just like, destroy everything.
Yeah, it's like it basically it's destruction engine encouragement. It's what it is. It's like you walk into a room, and if it's not bolted down, you should annihilate it. It's like your worst impulses are beneficial. So, and then there's a point, I just got something that lets you scan for them. So I'm sure that's going to minimize that, because it does become a little, because you have a stamina meter, at least at this point I do. And there is a bit of a weariness to going in and going, oh, God, there's like 80 things in here I have to smash. And then just go around and smash everything because it's almost like, yeah, destruction's fun, but but they did give, there's one thing that and here's another, this is just small things that I'm glad I'm not playing it right as it came out because I'm benefiting from what other people have learned. So there's a grenade they give you because basically the way it works is and this is very System Shock for anybody who's only played System Shock, there are recycling stations and there are fabrication stations. And the recycling stations, when you put junk into them, like banana peels, literally, or baseball gloves or whatever that you find, it then turns them into building materials that you use in the fabricators. And the fabricators can make, shotgun shells or health packs or, whatever you need. It's kind of the what do you call it from Star Trek? What do they call them? The replicators.
Aren't they called the replicators? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a replicator. So it's that. Again, very System Shock. Except in System Shock, you were converting the junk into coins that used in vending machines. Well, here they're just making it fabricated, but same difference. And then I found a grenade that, when you throw it, converts whatever you hit it with, which it's like for enemies. You throw it at an enemy, and it will convert them into these building blocks. It's like a black hole, reverse black hole. So it sucks them in and converts them into organic building materials. And I'm like, oh, that's neat. And then I happened to remember that in the video, the guy said, once you get that grenade, throw it where there's a lot of furniture and shit because it will convert all of these. Like, make a big pile, and you get a bunch of stuff to put into materials. And I'm like, I never would have thought of that, but that's a great idea because that's what it does. And the game lets you do it. I literally walked around a room for about 5 minutes, and I picked up every chair, every lamp, every, Rolodex or phone or whatever, and I dropped them in a corner, and I went, woohoo, and threw the grenade into it, and suddenly there was just building materials everywhere because it works on anything that's not bolted down. So those are great. I don't use them on enemies.
Will it convert? I was going to say, will it convert the enemies?
Well, it will, but that's almost a waste because there's far more material, there's far more furniture than there are enemies.
No, I know that, but I'm saying if an enemy happens to be like hanging out.
Yeah, it'll suck them in. Yes.
Do you know? Does it tell you that you've converted an enemy?
Well, yeah, you'll see the enemy get sucked. So yes, you will know because there'll be parts of the enemy around. Some of that stuff always gets left over. So, yeah, and then there's another little thing which again, I would have noticed it, but it didn't occur to me to even be possible. Is when you get to the station at first, you can boost yourself using what are called neuromods. And when you first get them, you don't really pay attention. Well, I wouldn't have paid attention because especially in a game like this where my mind is going into, okay, literally every room I walk into, my immediate thing is, okay, where can I go in the room? That's my first thought, not anything else. It's, okay, where can I get to? What can I explore? So you get this background thing. It's, you can get neuromods, which are basically upgrades. And, what you may not notice is at a certain point, a character tells you, what you can do is...
Real quick, what is the plot?
I don't entirely...
In a nutshell.
Well, I can lay out what I know so far. It's an alternate timeline where Kennedy was not assassinated, and there was a discovery that there were alien beings in space, so the Americans and the Soviets teamed up and built a space station where they were basically exploring what these creatures were and trying to develop technology from them and also build defenses against them. And then at some point, the creatures broke loose on the space station. But that's so in between when you wake up in the game, and it's very much like Portal, and you wake up and they're like, hey, Morgan, come on down to the test area. We're going to run some tests on you to see how the mods are doing in your brain, blah, 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 blah. And you go on down, everything looks normal.
You're not going to find out at some point that you're a mimic yourself or something like that, right?
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you, because I can summarize.
Because story-wise, that kind of makes sense that some shit like that might happen.
Well, I don't know yet, because what happens is at first you wake up, you go down, they're testing you, and they're like, you're not really responding the way we thought you would. Oh, it's okay. Keep doing it. It's very simple tests where you're kind of in the rooms doing this stuff. And then you go to sleep, and then you see somebody get attacked by this alien thing, and they knock you out. And then you wake up in the same room with the same setup, and they're like, come on down to the testing thing. And you open the door, and there's a body outside your door, and the station's fucked up. So clearly something has happened. And then as you go along, you realize that room was all fabricated. All the windows were, in fact, screens Because at one point you go to open the door to the balcony, it says jammed. So you're like, oh, it's broken. It says broken, jammed, or something. So you don't think anything of it. But that's because then when you come back with a wrench and you hit it, it was a screen. It was a testing room that they have run test after test after test because there's a problem with the neuromods that they didn't want to disclose to people on Earth, that if you get a neuromod removed, it erases your memory. So you go back and you can't remember anything. And they were like, well, that's going to be bad for business. So we have to just figure out why that's happening and get rid of it. We can't tell anybody. So then you come to find out that there's a recording you go and get of yourself telling yourself, hey, I got bad news for you. Anybody who's been exposed to these aliens, the blood, their whatever gets into your blood, and we cannot let this loose on Earth or everybody will be infected. So you're going to have to kill yourself. And right after that, your brother...
So this isn't a cheerful game, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't know. I don't know because I don't know whether I can trust myself. Because then my brother said, hey, you're misunderstanding. This is the problem. You were misunderstanding what was going on. This is actually the key to unlocking human potential. But you don't know whether you're supposed to trust him or not because one of the robots you've been talking to, which is apparently your secretary, maybe, I don't even know if I can trust that, has said that your brother was secretly working against you. But your brother says, no. If you give yourself they're called the Typhon. If you give yourself Typhon mods, you will become more than human. You will become better. This is actually what we want, and we should fight against it.
Very Deus Ex.
Yes. And so what I didn't think about was, but I know it will happen if I use the alien mods, which I haven't yet, is there are security defenses all over the station against the Typhon. So I've been using them early on. I'll pick up a turret and I'll go into a room and I'll drop it immediately in case a bunch of them swarm me. Thing is, if you start taking the alien mods, they scan the rooms constantly. So if you use too much, you start to read as an alien to them, and now they'll start shooting you. So the station will start to fight, which means all the medical, I believe even the medical repair bots will not help you. The engineering bots that repair your suit won't help you, and the turrets won't. But the Typhon mods are apparently very powerful. So it's, what do you want to do? Do you want to be fighting everything? Or, or do you want to keep that stuff on your side and you're less powerful against the bigger alien enemies? I don't know where I'm going to go with it yet because, as some people have pointed out, you can knock the turrets over pretty easily. So if I just pick up a tissue box and throw it at them, they'll fall over. And then they kind of go, or whatever, and they can't right themselves. So I don't know what decision I'm going to make on that yet. But just in general, the whole structure of this game is I'm kind of glad I didn't play it up till now because now I get to play it now. But at the same time, I'm like, shit, this is a really good game.
You're in the right place. You're in the right place.
Yeah. And I would never have, I doubt I ever would have played it. And some people have recommended it to me. So I know somebody will probably email and say, yeah, I told you to play that game. You're right. I'm sure you did. But seeing this 2-hour really in-depth breakdown of the systems right after watching his thing about immersive sims and System Shock, that's what got me to play it. So it's not that I disbelieved you. It's that I didn't really have the context of what the game was. So far, any game where I sit there for 3 hours and don't really accomplish much just because I'm running back and forth seeing what I can do, that's a fun game to me. So I'm having a good time with it. So I just wanted to
I mean, when you sometimes you're in the mood for that.
Also, because it is 5 years old, it's dirt cheap to buy and will probably run on almost any system.
And it's done. And it's done, too.
And it's
You're not
done.
waiting for,
There is a expansion for it, but it's a very specific expansion that I have no interest in, which is basically a loop to see how many people you can save on the moon's surface over and over and over. I have no interest, so I'll never play it. But that's the only piece of DLC, and it has nothing to do with the story. It's literally just a different way to use the gameplay tools. So if you see that, don't feel like you have to buy that. That's actually a complete... Watch a review of it first, because I watched it, I'm like, oh no, this is not for me. It's not really the game. It's almost its own separate minigame, so don't be lured into that. But like I said, dirt cheap game, probably runs very well on most systems. Looks pretty enough for its time. I mean, yeah, it's not going to stand up to something like Cyberpunk 2077, but you also need a rig that'll probably blow your house up to run that, so...
Can that shit even run on the PS5?
I believe now they've patched it where it can. I will end up getting it probably 2 or 3 years from now when all the DLC's out and it's dirt cheap, and then I'll buy it. But I'm not buying incomplete games anymore.
It'd be really awesome if they made it co-op.
Oh, please don't start me. I wish. It's one of the things I play certain games and I'm like, ah. You know what the problem for us is there are a lot of games that on the PC people have patched co-op into, but you don't have a PC that you can play games on.
Yeah.
So
no,
kind
I
of kills
not,
that. Yeah. Somebody suggested a game called for co-op for the PS5 called Atlas Fallen, which was that just came out. This just came out. A third person action role playing game. Atlas Fallen is action oriented. Players are required to dodge, counter, and block. See the counter stuff. That's the problem. I don't like counter stuff.
I hate countering.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll look at it. Although this does say that it is not a Souls-like, which is a good sign. They were inspired instead by God of War and the Horizon series. Okay, well, I do love those two games, so that actually means I will watch a review of this. So that the countering thing in Horizon is more optional. Like they make it seem like you have to, but you don't really. You don't actually have to counter, except with very specific enemy types. That's okay. If it's for specific enemies, I'm fine with it. If the whole game is, okay, you got to parry just the last... No, fuck. I'm not doing it. I ain't doing it. But this looks interesting. The fact that they said God of War and Horizon, okay, that's basically like saying Deus Ex and Fallout. You say certain words, I'm like, right. So I will look at this based on that. So if that is actually true, but it will not come before Baldur's Gate 3. Every time I read somebody going, holy shit, I did X thing in Baldur's Gate 3, I'm like, fuck, I want to play this game already. But, it ain't out yet for the PS5, so we'll get to
it. And we're waiting because, we walked away. We didn't walk away. We finished Dead Island 2. And we've gone back to, fucking Saints Row. The Saints Row flop.
The Saints Row flop, that's a fucking blast.
Yeah. I took a different approach. I took a male character and I turned it into a female character. What I really did was I made She-Hulk, a red She-Hulk, which I guess they called Shulk. Or no, a Rulk. They called it Rulk. Yeah, I made Rulk. But the dimensions are so weird because you know how big you can get the male characters in that game? Like ridiculous, like that to have.
God. There was a red She-Hulk called She-Rulk. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, well, I am playing as Shulk, and every time our
oh my God, that was Betty Ross. That's who the She-Hulk
was it? Is that...
Oh man, yeah.
And every time there's a cutscene in that game now, I just laugh hysterically because the character's just so big, and they there's a few more add-ons. We've gone back because there's DLC. But like they made it so you can change voices and you can modulate them, and there's a few more different weird things you could do, and it just makes it all that much more absurd. It's such an absurd like action comedy, that game. So I'm more than happy to go back while we wait for Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
So the second coming. But Baldur's Gate is made by the same people who made what do you call it? What was the other one that we tried that we weren't thrilled about?
Divinity. Well, we weren't.
Divinity,
we really didn't give it much of a chance, to be fair.
Yeah.
And especially now with Baldur's Gate being a newer one, and I did read, as I told you, that people had said some of the things that were bad about Divinity are fixed in Baldur's Gate. Well, then we're probably never going to get back to it because I've read Baldur's Gate is 75 to 100 hours, depending on how you play it. Well, we're going to be playing that for a while, Which I'm good with that because that's fine with me.
Well, because you get settled in and you know and you start to know how to play.
Well, I'm on my third playthrough of Wasteland 3, so Yes,
you are. You and I did it twice, and then.
And I'm still finding new things. That's all I want.
Well, you should. Yeah. I mean, your decisions should affect things.
Yeah, they should, and they do.
I don't have any like main reviews. I have actually some like mini reviews because there's stuff that it's
Weren't you
older.
Gonna review the Spider-Verse game?
Well, it's not. Like I said, it's not a full review. It's just kind of a because it's more so a review of things that have been done differently, and the fact that you haven't seen them yet. So, like for example, I saw Guardians 3, and you said you're not going to see Guardians 3.
I am not.
I mean, you had some issue with the animal violence,
Yes.
right? To which I said that there really wasn't that much animal. It's sad, don't get me wrong, but there isn't really that level of animal violence in it. But either way, that's not what I want to talk about. I wanted to talk about the way that I enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I'm not really going to get, like I said, that far into the nitpick of it, but I do find it fascinating the things that James Gunn is still pulling off of Farscape. I would really love to know if this is still on purpose, because so in Farscape, the main character Crichton was twinned. He was cloned, but it was a perfect clone. So there were two Crichtons. There was no original. You know, there was no way to know which the original was. They were both perfectly original. And what ended up happening is the character of Aaron's son runs off with one of the Crichtons because the ships get split up. So for like a whole season, one Crichton is with the love interest, getting closer and closer.
One quick note for anybody who hasn't watched Farscape, because the way you said that, they might have heard that as Aaron's son.
No, Aaron's
His character's
son.
name is Aaron Soon.
Aaron Soon.
Because the way you said it, if somebody doesn't know, you'd be like, well, wait, who's Aaron's son? No. Aaron Soon is the character's name.
We'll just call it Aaron. So Aaron is with one Crichton doing stuff in one ship, and the other Crichton is on Moya, the main ship, and they're apart for a whole season. In fact, there is always this little part of me that wonders how the fuck they would have handled that if they had actually come back and the one Crichton and Aaron were that close. Anyway, so eventually what happens is that Crichton that's with Aaron dies. He dies in a valiant way, protecting everybody in the universe, yada yada. And he dies. And then when Aaron gets back to the main ship, she has no interest in Crichton, in the other Crichton. Even though they are the same person, she's watched him die, she's traumatized, and so their whole relationship starts over, but in an even more weird way, right? Well, what's fascinating is that Guardians of the Galaxy 3, James Gunn was unabashedly said that he drew major inspiration from Farscape for Guardians, right? And it kind of continued on in little ways. Well, in this one, the whole thing with Gamora, essentially Gamora, he took the whole idea of the twin and he switched it over to Gamora. So Gamora dies in Endgame, and then her past self jumps forward in time, right? Which is a paradox that I don't understand how they were allowed to not fix. But maybe, timey-wimey, everything's all screwed up anyway. So this is a Gamora from before she met Star-Lord, before the Guardians. So this is like a younger, angrier Gamora. And so the whole movie, it's Crichton. This is where things are different. But this is one of the most fascinating things to me about the movie, this idea that the whole movie, you're expecting Gamora and Crichton to get back together, right? And that is the Farscape model, that eventually they will get back together. But what was interesting was that he didn't go that way. In fact, if anything, the movie helps the character come to peace with the fact that Gamora is gone. She is dead. She's passed. And it was one of the things in the movie that I was actually not nervous about, but it was one of the things it left me with awkward feelings. Do you know what I mean? Because you root for characters, right? And you root for couples on some degree. And Star-Lord is like Crichton. I always rooted for Crichton. And it's fascinating the way they handled it, because on one hand, you have to see it from Gamora's point of view, where it's like she doesn't know him. She doesn't have a history with him. So like this is just some creepy guy who's angry with her. And then from Star-Lord's point of view, Gamora has come back from the dead, but with no memory. And he's sure that if he can just, why can't we just fall in love again? And like it's awkward and it's sad and it's messy. And the way that it's concluded, where she realized she kind of comes to terms, Gamora comes to terms with the idea of why a version of her fell in love with Star-Lord. And Star-Lord comes to terms with the fact that this is not his Gamora. And there's a great line, you can find this online, where she says she's going to leave at the end. And she walks up to him and she says, "I bet we were fun." And he says, "Yeah." He's like, we were fun." And then she says goodbye to her sister and leaves. And I love that idea. It's the acknowledgement of, I understand that this was a good thing. It's not my thing. And then she goes back, and the whole idea is that she's found a family with the Ravagers, and that she is loved, and the character has kind of completed an arc, right? So it was interesting to me how Gunn continued to use the Farscape elements and then did something different with it, which was nice, So yes, I thought that's as far as I want to go with Guardians 3. I did enjoy. Oh, and what's his name? Drax becomes a dad to all these little clone children, and I was like, yep, that's what he did with Dargo. Dargo basically became a dad. That was his role, and then eventually, they didn't kill Drax though. I totally expected them to kill somebody. They teased it, but they never did it.
Yeah, I think everybody expected Drax to die.
Yeah. And then to take things in a totally different direction, Rocket essentially becomes the leader of the Guardians, which they never would have done with Rigel.
That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, I was fascinated and interested by the way that relationship was handled. Otherwise, I enjoyed the movie. Guardians of the Galaxy continue to be a fun space romp movie that are away from the rest of the Marvel Universe. They reference it. There's little things in there. But at the end of the day, they're sci-fi movies, and I'll keep watching them because they're how people are like, getting fatigued with like the superhero genre.
Oh, do I?
I don't consider Guardians to be the superhero genre. In fact, whenever they get included with something else is when they are weakest. So the Guardians are weakest in Endgame. They're weakest in even in the new Thor. They're very weak in that movie. They are the best when they are on their own in their corner of the universe, in which it becomes a fun space romp.
They are a metaphor themselves for superhero films. Better when they are self-contained.
Yes.
Except
now,
for rare occasions.
A movie that is not self-contained is Across the Spider-Verse.
Hence the rare occasion.
Yeah. And again, don't want to get into a huge review because at some point Joe is going to see this and then we will have a long talk about it nonetheless. But what I wanted to talk about specifically was my kids absolutely adore the first Across the Spider-Verse movie, right? They love that movie. They were not that fond of this one. I thought this movie was fucking awesome. Like, I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, there's people who say, well, this is the best superhero movie ever. I wouldn't go that far. But I enjoyed the shit out of it. In fact, there were moments in this movie where I thought, damn, this feels like something I would have written. Not in the sense of, like, I want to write a Spider-Man story, but in the sci-fi elements of dealing with alternate realities and alternate selves, but also having serious stuff running parallel to absurd stuff. There's some very big questions in this movie, and they're running parallel to like Spider Horse and Spider T-Rex. I mean, like, there's really silly shit. And not to mention, this movie plays with the very nature of the reality of animation, whereas there's live action shit in this movie. There's fucking Lego World in this movie. Like, when they say all dimensions, they really mean all dimensions, not just animation. I mean, what's his? Oh God, what's the actor? Is it Glover? James? What's his name?
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover. Yeah. Donald Glover, at one point, plays the Prowler. Like, it's him. It's live action. He is in a cell playing the Prowler from an alternate universe. Right, and I guess they did it specifically because at some point or another he was trying to make a Miles Morales.
So this
Spider-Man
is like
movie.
when they put what's his face as the Mr. Fantastic in the everybody wanted him to be.
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
that
What's
character's
his-
name,
yeah,
the
yeah,
actor.
that
I don't
actor.
remember the actor's name, but they all said,
can't
"Oh,
remember
he
his
should
name.
be Reed
Krasinski.
Richards." and they put him in there.
Krasinski,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, kind of like that. So, and he's in it just very briefly, but they also have images of the Spider-Man movies, right? So like, I like that they're bringing everything in. That was very cool. I think the reason that my kids didn't like it as much is because running parallel to all the fun action and comedy is a very serious idea, which is this idea of changing fate, of what people believe has to happen versus the possibility that you can change things. Because the whole impetus of the movie is that in the first movie, Miles is bitten by a spider from an alternate universe, right? So that spider DNA was never supposed to get into Miles Morales in his dimension. It was supposed to get into somebody else in its own dimension, but it got pulled through, which means that world never had a Spider-Man. And because Miles Morales became Spider-Man, inevitably, basically they're saying that it caused the death of his own Spider-Man, right? And that he is the original disturbance in the multiverse, right? Which is a fascinating idea, that our hero is the reason that things are so fucked up. But at the same time, our hero is the person, Miles is the person who believes that things can be done differently. That there is the chance that it doesn't always have to play out the same way. And it's fascinating because you have so many versions of Peter Parker. And it makes sense that, to some degree, all these versions of Peter, I mean, they're not always Peter, but sometimes they're Miguel, or sometimes they're, I want to call it Gwenpool, but they're Spider-Gwen, right? They're all living on the same chain of events, right? And Miles does not. Miles has both his parents. Miles is not that kind of Spider-Man. I mean, he watched Spider-Man die, right? But he's not that kind of Spider-Man. There's a different, the way they kind of describe, there's a different creativity to him. He believes that Spider-Man can do anything. So it's fascinating, this idea, because my daughter said to me, I didn't like it because there weren't any real bad guys. He was just fighting other good guys. She's like, I didn't like that. And I was like, yeah, but I was trying to explain to her. I was like, what is worse than having to fight the people that are supposed to back you up, but who are not because they don't understand, because they think that they're right and they're willing to fight you for it, which is very, like, it's devastating. I like what's called a Blade Runner. I like Spider-Man. Is it 2099? Is that what it is?
Yes, Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Miguel O'Hara.
yeah.
Spider-Man
Yeah,
2099.
yeah,
I also
yeah.
like that character quite a bit.
He looks great. The way he's aggressive. He's done really well by Oscar Isaac, right? And he is the villain on some level. He's the villain in that he is against Miles, and he's
the antagonist.
Yes, he's trying to stop Miles from saving his dad because they believe that the death of his father is a canon event which will keep reality in line, right? Because every Spider-Man loses somebody, right? And Miles is like, why would you tell me this and then not let me try and save him? So then Miguel is trying to stop Miles from doing that. And the thing is that Miguel is doing it because he thinks he's trying to save the multiverse, whereas Miles doesn't believe that they should be so limited. So like it's great because I don't really know what's going to happen, and that's the only downside of the movie, which is that we were at like the 10-minute mark, and my son looked at me and he was like, "How are they going to wrap this all up?" And I was like, "I don't know." And then they didn't.
And they won't.
They didn't. They said, "To be continued," and I was like, "Whoa!" I didn't realize this was a part one. Granted,
and that's when I told Lando that they used to say part one, and they removed it because I'm sure they didn't want people to not go, which is
I also
shit.
They tried to pull a what do you call it, an Infinity War, because Infinity War did this, right? You get to the end of Infinity War and you're like, holy shit, this is the end of the movie.
Everybody dies, fades off, and it's like dun dun dun.
Yeah, and Thanos walks off on the sunset. Like, I won, and you're like, holy shit, he won, right? I mean, that. Say what you will about the Marvel Universe, Infinity War is still one of the greatest fucking ball kicks they could have done. Right? I love the fact that the movie did that. I specifically didn't tell my kids what was going on, so when they watched Infinity War, they had that reaction. I think we should all have that reaction at some point cinematically. I think that's what Spider-Verse was going for. Or maybe they just needed like way more movie to finish telling the story. And I'm fine with that because it's fascinating. It's neat, and they're really getting into the strangeness of it all. You know, it's I never really got into the Spider-Verse stuff in the comics because like Spider-Man's never really been my character in the comics, right? But he's far more dynamic cinematically. He's far more interesting. And was it Lord Miller? Who the guy who
Lord
basically
Miller. Yeah,
Lord Miller. I love these guys. I love their work. I feel bad that I didn't get to finish the Solo movie because I feel like a lot of what made that movie interesting to me was their influence. I love what they did with the Lego movies. I really enjoy their approach. So they have made Spider-Man is great cinematically, but they have made it even better. You know, like these movies, a lot of times animation gets put kind of like below the live action shit, right? This movie is above the live action shit. I mean, I really enjoyed the last No Way Home, where they got into all the other actors, and to some degree, that's because it goes back to my youth, where I'm like, oh my god, that was my Spider-Man when I was a kid, right? But with this, they're getting into like the bigger picture of a multiverse of the infinite strangeness. And then there's a huge thing in there that I think probably went over my kid's head of like, how do you as a parent handle this? I mean, Miles Morales is supposed to be 15 years old, right? My son is 12. I was sitting there kind of looking at my son and thinking to myself, yeah, in 3 years, if my son got Spider-Man powers, I'd be pretty fucking worried shitless too. Like, this is trying to empathize with some of these characters. I mean, how old is Spider-Man supposed to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? What is he supposed to be? He's supposed to be like 16, 17?
Yeah, I believe so. I think
Yeah.
when he was introduced, that was the age. So I think they've kept it pretty close.
Yeah, like Miles is
looking
supposed to be 15 in the in this Spider.
Let's see. So in his first appearance, a grade schooler. Wait a minute, grade schooler. Hold on. What is grade school considered?
In the movies or in the comics?
No, in the comics. In the comics. Its references. It just says grade schooler. Who lives with his mother, a nurse, his father, who... Okay, it doesn't say what his father does. It just... What is a grade school? Okay, hold on. How old is... I don't know what... I mean, that can mean different things. How old is Miles Morales in the comics? Here, just search for it. So somebody says, in comics profile. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. A young... Okay, it says a young New York City teen. Well, that's not grade school, is it?
You're not helping me.
No, you're really not, assholes. Here, let me try this one. Oh, Jesus. Marvel reveal. No. Oh, good grief. Oh, here we go. How old is he currently? Old enough to party. The writers, he's aged up 5 years since introduced in 2011. He was 13 when introduced.
Yeah, I mean, like that. I think that's the thing is that you try to put it into a context like that, and you're like, yeah, 15. So like, it does not seem weird to me when his cop dad is like, the fuck are you doing? It's like, yeah, he's 15. It's like I wouldn't want, because also this movie spends a lot of time with Spider-Gwen and her situation, which is very different. And something that we haven't gotten on screen. So it's great that she has a lot of focus in this movie. And in the fact that she's being raised by her dad, the cop, on his own. And, his problem is he's trying to stop Spider-Woman, as they call her, because they think she's responsible for Peter Parker's death. Even though in her universe, Peter Parker essentially became the Lizard. And then he was killed accidentally when she was trying to stop him. Right? But they think, she killed him and it's this big thing. And when her dad finally finds out that she's Spider-Woman, at first he tries to arrest her because he's having a crisis now. He's sworn to uphold the law. His daughter is Spider-Woman, and she says she didn't kill Peter Parker. Well, it's like, well, what do you do? And then she runs off to the Spider-Verse Corps, whatever you want to call them. It's fascinating. It's very fascinating, and there's a lot of this kind of undercurrent sort of situation of like, how do you deal with your parents? How do parents deal with their kids? And loneliness. Like, there's a lot of the fact that Spider-Man is a lonely position. You know, part of the reason that Miles is trying to get to the, you know, they've kept him out of the multiverse core because he is the original anomaly. But he desperately wants to be part of this group because he doesn't want to feel alone. You know, and that's like one of the interesting things of Spider-Man. It's just Spider-Man is always one of the characters. He feels alone. I mean, in the cinematic universe, he's alone now, especially because everyone has forgotten him. In the comics, they've done it repeatedly. And it's like, yeah, also Spider-Man doesn't very often reveal his identity even to other superheroes. Like, everybody knows who Captain America is. The X-Men don't fucking wear masks most of the time, right? And the X-Men, anyway, are a big family. They're all together. They live together in a big house, right? They're not lonely. But Spider-Man, even when he was part of the New Avengers, he never took off his mask. No one knew who he was.
Right.
Didn't he make a deal with the devil to basically hide his identity?
Yeah, that was the One More Day story,
Yeah.
which everybody loved.
I know, but either way, you understand the idea.
He had to give up his marriage to go back to have his identity forgotten.
Yeah, and I think he did that because he was worried that, you know, something was going to kill her or something.
Well, I think because of him, because that was after Civil War when he took his mask off, and then like Mary Jane left him or something, and Aunt May got killed or died of stress or something. And he's like, my fucking life is ruined. Can everybody just forget about me? And Mephisto's like, okay, but you're not married to Mary Jane anymore because ha 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 ha. That makes, who cares?
Everything should always suck a bit, right?
Well,
Isn't that the
still at least they'll erase any memory of that with their new revisiting of the radioactive sperm storyline, which I don't know what they're gonna do with that, but apparently they're redoing it.
What?
Oh yes. This was I did not read this comic, but I remember reading about it when it happened. This was, oh geez. Hold on, I'll find the story for it. You didn't know about this either.
No.
Yeah, I didn't read the story because it's modern, and I just don't care. But let's see. Here it is. Let's see. So Spider-Man radio. This is almost. It's so bizarre. I'd almost want to see a movie of it because it's so stupid.
It's radioactive sperm.
Yes, here it is. Yes, Marvel really is revisiting the Spider-Man story about radioactive semen. Okay, this was from a. It was a sequel to One More Day. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was the most notorious Spider-Man ever told is Spider-Man Reign, a 2006 miniseries set 30 years in the future of Marvel Comics' ever-fluid timeline. Reign is for the most part a fairly forgettable story about an old, traumatized Peter Parker donning the mask once more to become Spider-Man and navigate a grim dystopian near future. Why people remember Reigns is the opening moment of the third issue, where a grief-stricken Peter cradles the decaying body of Mary Jane Watson, his deceased wife, and reveals that the cancer she died of was brought on because they had sex and his radioactive body fluids destroyed her body.
Oh, God.
And I will present to you the comic panel where it happens.
Oh, you're going to send it to me?
I'm going to send you the very dramatic... Click on that.
God.
it's I mean, even the scene, were it not stupid on its own, is illustrated in.
Why is he holding her dead body?
I don't know.
Did he dig it up?
I don't know, and I don't care. I didn't read the story. I guess maybe it's in his house, like Psycho, where she's just sitting upstairs. And
God.
yeah.
That's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is that whole. We need it to be dark and gritty. Dark and gritty.
I mean, if that isn't the dumbest thing.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Listen, the idea of a character who's been bitten by a radioactive spider being radioactive and somewhat dangerous to normal people, that makes total sense to me, right? But they never did it before.
I was going to say, they never, ever brought any of this up, though. He was never radioactive. Never.
Yeah. Then
it was always a thing that transformed his DNA. He didn't suddenly have radiation in him.
Yeah.
If anything, the spider was radioactive because it died right after it bit him.
Yes.
In the original, I remember that this thing it bit him and died. Yeah, it had spider cancer and it died. You know.
But no, I
now
never.
The show title. Spider cancer.
Oh, spider cancer.
Spider cancer.
Yeah, it's just it makes sense. I mean, listen, I know that at one point I was writing a quasi superhero story, and the idea was I had a character who absorbed energy. It's like that was, I think it was like a mutant. He had a secondary mutation, but essentially he could absorb energy and then could express it in different ways. I guess not Bison. Who was it like that?
Oh, Bishop.
God, Bishop was like that. Yeah. So he had kind of a power like that. At one point in the book, somebody had rigged a bomb that was a dirty bomb, and it was going to go off, and it was him and another character that was kind of like a Wonder Woman character, and the whole idea was that he absorbed the bomb. Bomb went off, and he absorbed the radioactivity. But in the story, it killed the girl, and it made him. It stopped the bomb from exploding, and destroying everything, but it killed the girl, and it. There you go.
I'm doing I did the wrong sound effect. Sorry about that, everybody.
That's fine. And he absorbed all the energy of this bomb. So right after he's lost his friend and loved one, he's basically told that he can't be around people because he is radioactive. He has become the bomb. And that, like, logically, that made sense to me because, like, no energy just goes away, right? Like, if you absorb energy, then you are now energized. This is the whole. That's why in Watchmen, when they said that they thought that Dr. Manhattan was giving people cancer, you're like, it turned out to be untrue, but it did kind of make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? So yeah, none of this seems weird. It just seems weird that they decided to do it, randomly so far down the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it was handled, very, I don't know, with kid gloves, I guess.
It's a crock of shit.
Well, there you go.
There you go. That is now becoming one of my favorite sound effects. It's so useful.
You know what? Listen, they don't always get it right.
No.
Yeah.
No, actually, the irony of Spider-Man comics is that those are some of the worst in terms of when they get it wrong. Some of the stupidest comics I've ever read.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, I never read the comics.
Oh, I for a while. I mean, I haven't in a long time, but when I was younger, I read a lot of Spider-Man comics, and when they're good, they're among the best. I mean, Kraven's Last Hunt is an exceptionally excellent Spider-Man story.
Did you see the Kraven trailer?
You know what? I'm going to say this. Yes, I did. Just like everybody else who was like, what? But I'm going to say this.
Yep.
I don't know why. I mean, I guess I do. I shouldn't say that. I guess I wonder sometimes.
Yes.
Because obviously we don't know what happens in movie studios, right? We can only speculate. We're on the outside. We're not in executive boardrooms.
Yes.
So my guess is, because watching the trailer, I went, okay, I guess if you can't use Spider-Man, what else can you do with this character? I guess you have to make him into a super-powered game hunter.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, what other purpose is there to this character? Right?
Yep.
There's none. So I don't think it's going to be good. I'm actually shocked that he looks as close to the comic character in his costuming as he does.
The weird part is that he looks great, right?
He looks great. But I mean, I don't have Spider-Man.
I don't remember Kraven having. Did he have superpowers?
No, he had no superpowers. No.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put it like this. If he did, they weren't explicit. There were certainly stories where he seemed to have a enhanced set of abilities from being with animals or something, but it was never like they were like, oh, you're a mutant, or unless, little asterisk, in the times that I read the comics. Now, since then, I have no idea what they've done with him. They may, for all I know, have given him superpower. They probably did, because don't forget, he killed himself. So he's already
he?
come back. Oh, yeah. That's what Kraven's Last Hunt is. The end of it is him committing suicide.
yeah. That's right.
Because he did the one thing that was left to do that he'd never done, which was he beat Spider-Man. And he said, now that I've done that, there's no point, and he eats a fucking shotgun. It's a beautiful story. I mean, I'm not saying that like suicide's beautiful. What I'm saying is it's a wonderfully done story.
It makes
of that character.
sense, like the arc of the character, yeah.
Yes, that's why if you're not going to do that story, I don't know what you're doing with Kraven the Hunter unless he's part of a group, and you're still going to have to introduce him, and fundamentally, he's a dumb character.
Yeah. Even
in the comics.
Like,
he's a dumb character.
I don't know what the impetus of the character is now, because, I mean, the thing, he was a big game hunter, and this, he's some kind of vigilante. You know, like, what is he up to?
I mean, I'm reading. I don't even see that he has any powers. Oh. Okay. You know what? I do remember something about this from the comic, that he drinks something that basically makes him whatever. So it's a potion. Oh, there you go.
So like
from jungle herbs.
Like Black Panther?
Yeah, grants himself superhuman physical abilities, making him a physical threat to Superman. Here we go. Although these powers are not as developed as those possessed by Spider-Man. So
by Superman. Hold on one second.
Sorry, Spider-Man.
What?
Spider-Man. I meant to say Spider-Man. I said Superman. So apparently he's tougher than most people, although that doesn't mean anything. His aging has slowed because of the potion. Enhances sight, hearing. Yeah. So basically, it's supposed to be like animal powers, and that's fine. He's an Olympic level athlete without the potion, so he's very physically good, and the potion enhances it. So for all we know, it just pumps him full of adrenaline for 3 hours, or whatever. So yeah, so he's never been a superhero like they seem to be portraying it now. If in the movie he's drinking a potion to do that, which they didn't show, he just seemed to be able to do it, then that would at least somewhat explain it.
What was that other really, really good Spider-Man offshot movie they did? That was that one. You know, it was a villain character. Movie? Yeah, what was it? Oh, is it Mobius? Morbius. Yeah, Morbius
was really good.
Remember how well that went?
No, the one that was good was Venom, because it was like, oh, this makes no sense. Okay.
No, I love Venom. They turned it into a romance.
I love Venom too, because it's fucking bonkers. It doesn't try to be Spider-Man less Venom.
The villain, so the villain in Across the Spider-Verse can travel across dimensions, and at one point he pops his head through a hole and he talks to the Asian lady who runs the Cookie Mart in the Venom movies.
Oh, that's great.
And she's completely unsurprised, doesn't care, and he's like, "You seem very calm about this." He's like, my head is coming through a portal in the nothing. And she's like, "Yeah, whatever." And he's like, "You're acting like this is the normal night for you." She's like, "Yep, can I help you?" And
she did see Venom eat a guy's head off in front of her.
No, in the sequel, he jumps into her body for a while.
Oh yeah, that's right, that too. Yeah. So for her, this isn't anything. Yeah.
Yes, I thought that was very funny that they did that. But yes,
that is very funny.
I just don't know. I find Sony's attempt to build a whole universe around Spider-Man to be.
Oh, sorry. So what I was trying to say was, I don't know why they wouldn't go to Marvel, because they have obviously collaborated in some way on certain things. Why they wouldn't go to Marvel and say, look, we own these characters, so you can't use them. You own Spider-Man, so we can't use them. We would like to try to make a version of the best Spider-Man story possible, and we'll just put both our names on it and release it. But of course, that would require executives not trying to measure each other's dicks every 15 seconds and actually being interested in telling a good story. So it's nonsensical. But it would print money for them. That's the thing, though. They would make money, because if you let somebody make that story, it would be the Logan of Spider-Man. That's I mean, it would. That's a Logan level story for Spider-Man, is Kraven. You don't really have to know anything about him. Because when I read Kraven's Last Hunt, I knew nothing about Kraven outside of the fact that he was basically a big game hunter villain. But I didn't know anything about him. And the story basically told you only what you needed to know about his background. And it was very clear. It was very concise. And it wasn't even a particularly long graph. It's not like it's not Watchmen. You know what I mean? It's not a thick volume. And yet it's a great story. So it's not like it can't be adapted because it's too big. Shit, they made Watchmen. So if they made Watchmen, which I think that book compared to, it's probably 3 times as long, I'm going to guess, roughly. I don't know the page count. But in my mind, thinking of the two graphic novels physically, one is 3 times the size of the other.
You know
or
what?
at
Actually,
least double.
What's fascinating is that you could do Kraven's Last Hunt with Venom.
Yeah, you could, but...
But you could.
No,
you
couldn't.
He wants,
you know why?
because
No,
he wants to
no, you
hunt
can't.
something.
No,
Okay.
you know why? Because part of that was the contrast of... It was Peter Parker's reckoning with the fact that Kraven was around people and was doing things and impersonating him. Like, he was very, very upset about it. Venom
he
wouldn't
wore
be
the
like that.
He wore the black costume.
Yes,
at
he
one point,
buried
didn't
him alive and wore the
Yeah.
black costume and went around and he was beating the fuck out of people in a way that made
Yeah.
everybody realize that there was either something wrong with him. I think one person, he goes to see Mary Jane at one point and she's like, "You're not Peter." And he doesn't take the mask off, but she figures it out. And then, that Vermin character, who would be weird to do in a movie because that's such a weird comic book character, but still,
the rat guy.
Yeah, he's wailing
Yeah.
on him and bleeding and like beating him to shit. That's why it would work as a Sony movie, because Marvel doesn't want a dirty Spider-Man that way, but Sony would. They did Venom. So it's a good story. But again, it would require them actually caring more about telling an accurate adaptation with a good story, as opposed to how can we just market this and be dominant. So it'll never happen. But that's what you do. And outside of that, I'm sorry, Kraven is fucking useless. He's useless. He's not a good character. Just isn't.
I thought the trailer was quite. It's
as good as it can be.
I found it to be silly. I watched the trailer and I thought this looks silly.
Yeah, if they played it as some kind of meta commentary, it could.
You know
work.
what? If they played it the same way they fucking played Venom, which is like, don't take yourself seriously.
Yeah,
Have
but they're
fun with
obviously
it.
not the way it's, because isn't Russell Crowe his dad or something? Who's his
Yeah,
dad?
I think so. Yeah, Russell Crowe's his
Yeah.
dad. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
I know, and they're playing like childhood trauma, and
yeah. So the dad's gonna be the bad guy. It's gonna be Hulk again. It's just gonna be him fighting his father in some mutated cat form or tiger form, and I never wanted to be you. You are me. I made you. And they'll wail on each other, and it'll be a bunch of meat slapping on itself and rain, and he'll kill his father and look up and
the
scream.
meat slapping.
We
love the meat slapping.
Yeah, it'll be just. It's all it's gonna be, because.
You know what?
Again,
You should really find a sound effect for meat slapping, so that whenever we have a movie like this that's just meat slapping, you can just be like, whack, 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 whack. Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just
So,
lots of Predator sounds.
Well, yeah. So, like I said, I saw those 2 movies and I enjoyed them.
Good.
So, what is your?
Okay.
What did you do with yourself?
All right. I watched. There's a director who died late last year, who made one of the movies that you and I adore, which is called Nemesis. The director of Nemesis.
Oh, he died?
He died in November of 2022. Yes.
Oh.
He'd been sick for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what. I don't know if it might have been cancer.
Oh man, William Friedkin died as well.
I wasn't going to play this, except you just brought it up, because
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the interview's been making the rounds of him talking about the fact that he doesn't give a shit about Al Pacino. Have you heard this clip at all?
Wait, are we supposed to give a shit about Al Pacino?
No. Well, I mean, you're not. But specifically, what he
Yeah.
was being asked about was, famously, one of the movies that he made early on is a movie called Cruisin', where Al Pacino is searching for a serial killer that is going after homosexuals. And it was, a movie that was very much about gay culture, but it wasn't really the best portrayal of gay culture,
I have not heard of this movie.
Oh, yeah. No, it's actually a pretty good movie because it's so well directed. If you're going into it expecting a very fair and level-headed depiction of homosexual men, you're probably going to come away a little bit annoyed. But as a movie, it is actually very compelling. But apparently when it was being made, Al Pacino had a bunch of friction with Friedkin over it. I guess had a lot of opinions, didn't think that, he necessarily was doing the movie right. I don't know whether, I don't know exactly what his complaints were, but I don't know that they were necessarily grounded in any type of actual legitimate complaint. And this has been a famous thing. And so there was an interview where somebody was starting to structure the question about, Al Pacino has talked about the fact that he had problems with what you were doing on the set. And Friedkin cuts the guy off with this quote.
I don't give a flying fuck into a rolling donut about what Al Pacino thinks.
That's what he says, and then he looks at the guy and says, "Is that what you're gonna? Is that the answer you're looking for?" And the guy says, "That's the most direct answer I could ever hope for." And then he says something about he said something about Pacino not being prepared. He's like, Tommy Lee Jones prepares for his roles. I'll listen to him. Al Pacino doesn't prepare for his roles. I couldn't give a fuck less. And I'm like, wow, that's probably the greatest quote I've ever heard somebody say about an actor who's considered one of the great actors in the world. I mean, most people will not speak that directly in an interview that way, but Friedkin just didn't give a shit. Now, he also had some bad parts. I mean, if you read about how he treated what's the girl from The Exorcist? Oh, what's her name? Linda Blair. He did some terrible things to her where they were fucking jerking her around with no concern for her safety, and they fucked her back up. So I don't want to paint him as some kind of wacko genius. He had his bad side just like everybody else.
Listen, he was a director.
Right.
Right.
But that quote alone, I'm like, holy
there's
shit.
good, there's bad.
Yes. So,
yeah.
Since you brought it up, I wanted to play that. So, yes. Friedkin did die and has made some of the great movies like The French Connection and others. Great movies. Anyway, for B-movie cinephiles like myself, Albert Pune, I think I pronounced that right, is the guy who did Nemesis, among many other films, and made really fun B-movies. Often didn't have a lot of budget, but had a lot of imagination.
Say what you will. Nemesis is a fun fucking
movie.
No.
I love Nemesis. Len Kabaczynski loves Nemesis. We all like Nemesis. That's what I'm saying is, but you would never confuse it with Terminator 2. Like, there's clearly a difference in what was available to the director in terms of resources.
Absolutely, yes.
But I don't think that's because he wouldn't have made a good movie. It's because he never had the money and the talent available to make that movie. That's what I'm getting at. Uh-huh. So, I happened to see that somebody said, they put up on YouTube a good copy of Radioactive Dreams, which was the movie that partially inspired Fallout. And I went, there's one of those magic words. What was that? Fallout, you say? And I went, okay, I've never heard of this movie. What is it? And once you read what it is, and then once I watched it, oh yes, it's very evident that this is partially what was going through the people. And Fallout was in the 90s, early 90s, so it makes, I believe the first Fallout was 90, I want to say 92 or 97. I can never remember. Let me look so I get my stuff accurate. 97. So clearly it was around the time this movie would have been out and being seen. And so here is the synopsis. I'll just read the beginning of it. A nuclear war breaks out, expending the world's entire nuclear arsenal except for one missile. Two children, Philip Chandler and Marlo Hammer, are left in a fallout shelter cut into the side of a wooded mountain. The pair grow up in the shelter.
Hold on.
Philip
Marlo
Chandler
Hammer.
and Marlo Hammer. Yes, and
that's a good name.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's also, pulp noir fiction names of authors and characters.
Yeah.
The pair grew up in the shelter with 1950s detective fiction and swing music as the guiding force in their learning. On April 1st, 2001, as noted in the title card, Marlo succeeds in digging out the cave entrance. The pair give each other haircuts, dress in zoot suits, and go out to rejoin the world. Right. That's Fallout. So essentially what this movie is Fallout. It's two characters who were sealed in this bunker by their fathers when basically there was a nuclear war, and I think it was 96. Everything blew up. They were in the bunkers with their fathers, and at some point, and they were very young. I mean, they're 3, 4 maybe. And the fathers basically leave them, and the bunker, which makes sense because it was built in the 50s, is all 50s stuff. Yeah, so without their fathers, who never come back, they grow up and only... Yeah.
You've been to that bunker near Vegas, right? The one that's
I have many
50s.
pictures. Oh, yeah,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So they grow up, and their only references to anything are 50s fiction.
Yeah.
So they get out, and they want to be private eyes. And they're talking and dressed like they're in the 50s, which makes sense because that's what they grew up with.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the rest of the world has progressed. So the rest of the world is now in, 2000. Well, I mean, it was made in 85, so it's 85, even though they call it 2001. So modern cars, everybody's like into punk music. They're all dressed like that.
Yeah, but it's like post-apocalyptic.
It's a wasteland. It's Fallout. It's Fallout.
Yeah.
And so there's all different gangs that are all, dressed. So it's like a Mad Max type of thing where they run into bikers and they look like Mad Max bikers. And then they come across the greatest, the best part. What would you say in terms of amusement? What are your favorite things about RoboCop 2? I want to see if you mention one thing specifically. What are the fun things about RoboCop 2?
The fun things, I'll buy that for $1.
That's one, but in 2. Specifically 2.
Oh, in RoboCop 2.
Yeah, in RoboCop 2.
Oh, Jesus. I always like the fact that the robot wants drugs. It makes no sense to me.
That's
the
one.
boss is a kid.
Ah!
And when they make RoboCop the happy RoboCop.
The failure RoboCops. That's great. But the kid's great because he swears his head off. And what do these characters run into almost right away? 2 kids who are dressed in leisure disco suits, who they call the Disco Mutants. And their encounter with them is they run across this kid, and the kid is pretending that the car with their parent has broken down and he needs help, so he's trying to rob them. And I pulled the dialogue so that you can hear these young children swearing their head off. Here we go.
Where's your pup?
He's waiting inside the bus. He's missing his legs because of the war.
You fucking bitch ever slap me in the fucking face again! You're a wasted piece of shit!
Out of the vehicle! Fuck face before I fucking blow your fucking brains all over the fucking car! No!
Right. So that's the first one, because another kid falls out of the car and he's like beating this woman, apparently punched him or something. So he's swearing his head off, which of course blows the thing that they're trying to hold these people up. And then they start yelling at each other, which I've got this, which is even my wife was laughing her head off at this. This is one of them yelling at the other. There's only 2 of them, but they're yelling at each other.
Okay.
Ow! Ow! You fucking idiot, Chester! Kill the fucking bitch!
Oh, fuck you, hell! Never call me a fucking idiot!
These fucking kids. I wish the whole movie had followed them. So anyway, they encounter these kids, and they very easily, which I like, they disarm them immediately because they just basically grab the guns out of their hands because they're fucking kids, and they run them off. And so the woman that they were trying to beat up is a woman who is essentially part of not really a gang, but a group that are like Haight-Ashbury 60s people, like hippie kids.
Okay.
So before that, though, right before they ran into them, they saw a woman being accosted by radiated, mutated guys. The only time you see them where they actually have all they're like mutants. They're like classic radioactive mutants. And they save the woman, and it's very clear to the audience right away that she's obviously hiding something or whatever. And so they give her a ride to, hilariously, a phone booth in the middle of nothing. And then as she goes to get out of the car, she kind of starts to make out with one of the guys, and they're played by the actors' names are John Stockwell, who's been in a ton of things. You wouldn't know him just to look at him, but he's been in a lot of stuff. And then Michael Dudikoff, who was the guy that Cannon tried to make into their big next
Wait,
Chuck
Dudikoff.
Norris. Yeah, American Ninja. The American Ninja.
Yeah, blonde guy.
Blonde guy in a million things with Cannon in the 80s. So
yeah, he's in everything.
This was pre that. So this, I think, was right before they started trying to put him in everything. But in any event, she starts making out with Dudikoff, and what he doesn't realize is that she's like lifting the gun off him. He has a gun on him, and she kind of gets it from him and secretly like hides it away. So of course we know that there's some angle to her. She goes and makes a phone call, and then I guess she must be walking completely perpendicular to the phone booth, that somehow she gets out of their sight because they're in the middle of nothing. And then she gets into a getaway car and she drives off. But she didn't realize that when she was removing the gun from Dudikoff's pants, I guess, she dropped her not her wallet. She drops a wallet that contains 2 keys. But the keys are weird looking. Now, anybody who knows anything about nuclear weapons right away will see that they're launch keys. But they find them and they're like, what are these keys? And they have their dad's names on the pouch that the keys are in. And so Dudikoff, of the 2, and he's Marlowe, so Philip and Marlowe. Marlowe is the one who's optimistic, who thinks everybody, like he's looking on the bright side of everything. He trusts everybody, and Philip is much more jaded. And at this point, now that they've grown up and got out in the world, and they find this thing that tells him that their fathers were alive and never came back. And he's like, why wouldn't they come back? You know, that obviously they didn't ever love us, so fuck them. Like, he gets very bitter. And so they're basically like opposites, but they're also basically brothers. They're not technically brothers by blood, but they've lived together their whole lives, so they stick together. But again, Marlo is the happy-go-lucky one, and Philip is the kind of bitter and upset one. So they run into those kids. They rescue this woman, and this woman says, well, you know, I don't know who these guys are, because they said, well, we're looking for our fathers. She's like, well, I can bring you back to, I believe it's called Dodge City, and in Dodge City, maybe there's somebody who can help you find them. And I think they mentioned we found these keys and they belong to our dads. We want to go find them. Or not Dodge City, it's Edge City. That's right, because I remember there's a big sign in neon, which is Edge City, which almost like a neutral zone for all different gangs. So there's 50s people, which again is almost like a Fallout thing. There's cannibals, there's punk rockers, there's the 60s people, all different types. And they kind of exist in this very loose tension where, you know, anything could boil over in any minute, but they kind of all just agree to keep the city somewhat neutral. And so they get there, and the woman's name is Rusty, and she takes Philip, and she suggests, you know, let's go and, you know, find my place, and, you know, we can, fuck, basically. And so she drags him off, and then she starts to put his hands in shackles, and of course, as the audience, we already know this is not a good sign. And sure enough, then the cannibal gang shows up, and they're like, well, we can do two things. We can take those keys from you, or we can eat you. What would you like it to be? And he's like, fuck you, I'm not giving you anything. And they're like, all right, well, we'll start by eating your brother, and you can watch that, and then maybe you'll change your mind. He's like, all right, I'll give you the keys. He manages to get away from them, and, he's running away. They're chasing him, and so it becomes for a while a long series of chase scenes where they're constantly trying to find somebody they can trust, nobody that they can trust. Everybody's kind of turning on them. So they describe it as a science fiction comedy, but it's not really a comedy. I don't really know why they use that. I think they're comedic elements, but it's not really a comedy. It's more of a straightforward science fiction film, like very straightforward, like a Fallout game, but not even as funny as Fallout could be with its weird stuff. So eventually what they do is they find out that the keys that they have are to the last nuclear missile on Earth. Or in America. It's never really clear, but they keep referring to it as the last missile. And so, obviously, what's happening is everybody wants the keys to that missile because then they're the strongest gang. So this is just gang warfare over the biggest gun on the planet. Or in America, again. They never really... I mean, you're told everything gets wiped out, so it sounds like it probably is the last missile on Earth. So whoever has that, you control the spice, you control the universe. Same thing. So they get to a point where they finally, even Marlo has gotten to the point where he's like, okay, you know what? I was wrong. Everything's fucked. So we just need to go out there and wipe everybody out that's trying to get us, and then we'll go find the missile and we'll run things. So there's a part where and it's interesting because over the course of the movie, they slowly, because they start off when they come out of the shelter, they have basically like 50 zoot suits on, and they're clean and everything else. And as the movie goes on, there's parts of their clothing are stripped off. They're getting dirtier. They're getting beaten down because it's
the world is sucking them in.
Yeah, it's metaphorical and literal both at the same time. So there's a point where they are literally completely covered in bruises, blood, soot, and they're in their undershirts and boxer shorts, and they're running around. And that's the point where they finally kind of break. And then the next thing you see is they come out and they're dressed again in impeccable suits. They look like private eyes. They look like 50s noir private eyes. And what they're going to do is, so at that point, they, like Rusty, who's the girl, catches up to him. And she says, they forced me to do it, and I'm really sorry. And basically Philip at this point says to her, you know what? I've forgotten all about it, and I've also forgotten about you. I don't even remember who you are, which is basically kind of like the fuck you. I don't care. You don't mean anything to me. So they decide that they're going to become essentially in that Edge City. They're going to become the sheriffs. They're going to wipe out the gangs, and they're going to establish law because they'll have the missile. So right about then, the woman from the beginning, who's been slowly tracking them in the background, gets them cornered. And at one point, Marlo gets caught. When Philip is fighting the cannibals, you see that Marlo has gotten snagged by those kids again. The kids catch up to him, and they take him, and they tie him up. And you see him, and he's looking over, and the kids are talking to two large figures with lizard faces that you assume are some kind of mutants or whatever, because they've got... Remember when...
Is it masks? Tell me it's the parent, it's the dads.
Yeah, yes, of course it is. I almost clipped that,
dads.
but it's so obvious to anybody who's watched movies a bunch, there was no point in doing the whole entire clip. But they look like, at first, like when Thulsa Doom turns into the snake. Remember there's a part where he's
Yeah.
got the face.
Yeah.
They're actually really good masks because I didn't realize that they were masks. I thought they were going to be the fathers mutated. I was pretty sure they were the dads, but I thought they had actually been so mutated that's why they didn't recognize them when Marlowe sees them. And they wouldn't because they are masks, but they're really good masks. For a movie like this, the prosthetics are really good because I thought they were just going to end up being mutant people.
Hey, you know what? Nemesis had great.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
the
just
metal
saying.
effects, the robot effects were really well done in that.
But that's what I'm saying this is what I mean about, if this guy had had the budget and the support for a really big movie, he would have made a really great movie at some point.
I wonder why he didn't progress.
Probably because he got typoed as a genre filmmaker who was just making. I mean, people do that. And that's okay. Maybe he only wanted to make those. Maybe this was a choice. I don't know. Maybe he had more fun working outside the studio system. It's very possible.
Freedom.
I mean, he made a good amount of fun movies, so maybe he was smart in the choices he made. I don't know if he ever aspired to anything more than doing this stuff, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just saying I would have loved to have seen somebody come up to him and say, "Here's $50 million, do whatever you want." And what the fuck would he have done? But whatever, we have movies like this, so I don't care. So yes, essentially they get to a point where the woman from the beginning, whose name was Miles Archer, that was her name, she corners them, and she's about to shoot them when suddenly the kids and the two lizard guys show up, and they're all fighting, and they kind of split. They move away from each other for a minute, and Philip says they're talking to each other, and one of the lizard guy goes, "What are your names?" And it's like Philip and Marlowe, and he's like, "Holy shit!" And they pull off the masks, and yes, it's the fathers. The fathers run the little swearing kids gang, which is great by itself. and so there's a part where they're about to be reunited, and then Miles has kind of flank them and start shooting at them, and everybody's shooting at each other, and of course the fathers get gunned down. And as the one father is dying, Philip goes up to him, the bitter one, and says, "Were you even really our fathers? Because I don't think our real fathers would have left us." And that dad says, "Doesn't matter, the past doesn't matter, all that matters is what you do with your future," and dies. So you're not even really clear on whether these were their kids.
Jeez.
And I don't think it matters, but it's an interesting thing that I think.
But why did they save them then? Is the question.
I don't know. It could be that they were doing a nice thing and then they got sick of doing a nice thing. Like the other dad, who's played by George Kennedy, who most people would know as the chief from Police Squad.
Yeah.
He seems more genuinely affectionate towards them. So maybe it was something where he maybe it was that they found them at the bunker and just wouldn't leave two kids out to die. It could be that simple. And then the one was like, "All right, we need to get the fuck out of here. Like, this was fine to save them. Yeah, we've done our part, but there's plenty of supplies. Let's go back out there." That's what it felt like, that one was more of the less caring father and the other one was more of a caring father. That's kind of what I inferred from it. It's never specifically said, but that's what I felt like it was trying to do. So they get gunned down, and then basically Philip and Marlowe manage to wipe out all the gang except for Miles. And she's like... and she says something along the lines of, "Okay, well, you've won, so, fine, I'm just going to leave." And she goes to leave, and Philip says, "Really, you're going to leave, and you're not even going to try to get the key after all that?" And she's like, "Nope, you gunned everybody down, what's the point?" And then she tries to pull the gun out and shoot him, and Marlowe ends up killing her because he kind of reacts and shoots and then kills her. And so then that seems to be like the point where Marlowe has completely broken down, kind of like Deer Hunter style, like, that's it, it's done. Like, this is the last thing. He's now killed somebody, and he's lost all his innocence. Right? So now everybody's dead, or at least the major gangs are dead. But Philip turns to him and says, "You know what?" Because I think it's supposed to be that the dad's message sort of got through to him on some level. And he says, "You were right, and we can't just give up on everything. We have our whole lives in front of us. I think your approach is better." And so they open the doors to this warehouse, and the rest of the city is out there, and they're looking at them. And then there's a voiceover from Philip where he says, "I thought that they were looking at us because they were getting ready to attack us, but they were looking for somebody to give them something other than a hopeless future." And he turns to Marlowe and he says, why don't we do that dance that you kept trying to teach me in the bunker, which is basically like some kind of swing dance thing. And so they start doing that, and the idea is supposed to be that now they're in charge of the city and they're going to try to make it a more hopeful city. But then they give a voiceover where he says, "Me and Marlowe, we're going to stay here in the city and we're going to try to make a better future for these people." He's like, and I'm going to go find Rusty because maybe I should give her another chance. Maybe Marlo's right and I was being too hard on her. Oh, and as for the missile, well, yeah, we kept the keys because you never know if something bad happens. It's always good to have a missile in your back pocket. And then the movie ends, and that's it. And it's a really fun movie. I actually liked it a lot. And if you like Fallout or any type of post-nuclear apocalypse film, the only bad thing about it is there's no good copy of it. I mean, there's apparently a German DVD, but from what I've read, it's just a VHS rip.
But it's a British movie or an American movie?
Oh, no, it's American. No, it's an American film. So it will probably, my hunch is now that Pune has died, they're probably going to do a remastering of his stuff. If I had to guess. That at some point there's going to be a, Albert Pune collection because he made so many movies. And a lot of them, I mean, they're genre films. It'll probably be a Vinegar Syndrome or something along those lines. It won't be, Warner Brothers Classics collection or anything like that. But somebody will put together movies by this guy because he made so many movies that people really like. I mean, I'll just read some of them. Sword and the Sorcerer, which was the only movie he did before Radioactive Dreams. Vicious Lips, Alien from L.A., Cyborg, the first one. Doll Man, Nemesis.
Oh, God, Doll Man.
Brain Smasher, A Love Story.
Oh, was that the one with
Andrew
Dice Clay?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
No, I didn't realize that was him.
Yeah, that's Albert Pune. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is there's lots of movies that you don't think about that this guy. Let's see. Omega Doom, which is a Rutger Hauer film. That's really fun. And I think I never saw Road to Hell, but I think that one's well regarded because it was kind of, he watched Streets of Fire and then decided to make a movie that was kind of the same type of thing. And so anyway, so he's made enough movies that you could easily put together a 5 to 10 film collection. And I hope this is, or at least that they go back and actually remaster this thing because it's a good movie. I mean, it's definitely a B movie, but it's a pretty good one.
What's the year on it?
Well, I've seen 84 and 85. So if you look up Radioactive Dreams 84 or 85, it'll come right up.
Okay.
And I'm going to link to the YouTube channel. There's a couple of YouTube uploads of it. They've been around for a couple of years, probably because there is no copy of this available. So I'm guessing nobody's going after them. So they're very watchable. They're definitely, they look like they must be VHS rips, but they're decent enough quality that if you're curious at all, you can, I mean, it's free. And the sound isn't terrible. The picture is okay. Again, it's not going to be HD. It's not. It's clearly a VHS copy, but it's a pretty good one. And I've seen far worse VHS rips to YouTube than far worse than this. So I would say if you're at all interested in the genre, again, post-nuclear apocalypse, whatever, or you're a Pune fan, which I was, and I'd never heard of this movie. I've somehow never heard of it. And it was from somebody in the Discord that said, hey, this thing is on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. I'm like, I want to watch it. What, are you kidding? So if you're into this type of stuff, it's a fun movie. And it's like 90 minutes long, so not too long like most movies of this type are. So it's relatively short. And it has a good pace. It keeps moving. It never really lags on anything. It's well enough done that there was clearly some thought in it.
It's the closest thing you had to a Fallout movie for a while.
Seriously. I mean, it really is. And I can definitely see, because I mean, another one would be A Boy and His Dog, which I think that one's from, when is it?
But that movie is so depressing.
75. Yeah, it's horribly depressing, but the dog in it is called Dog Meat, which is clearly where Fallout came from with that. So I'm not saying this is the movie that directly inspired Fallout, but the tone.
I think there's a lot of elements that created Fallout. Even to this day, there's still things that are affecting Fallout.
The first Wasteland was the guys who then went to do Fallout, most of them. So I mean, but if you watch this movie, it feels tonally very close to Fallout in that it dips into seriousness and comedy at times, but it never gets too serious or too goofy. It maintains a nice even tone, and it's got a good movement to it, and that's what I like about it. But like I said, if you like Pune movies, it's all here. There's really good visuals. The design of the different gangs is really funny and interesting. Like there's a lot of variety to it. There's some really good set design stuff. Those prosthetic lizard faces are fantastic. The swearing kids are great. Which, I mean, I never don't like a movie where actual kids are actually swearing. It's not dubbed. They are swearing. You can tell. This was recorded on set with these kids swearing their heads off, which is delightful. So, top to bottom, great movie. like I said, if you like following any of this kind of stuff, it's absolutely worth watching, especially because you can watch it for free. I just hope at some point there is a good copy that comes out. I would love to see a really nice copy of this, because there are movies where the clarity will make the movie worse because you can see the cheapness of the effects. This movie, even if you could tell the effects weren't that great, it doesn't matter because there's a lot of imagination in it, so you overlook the defects. Some movies do actually, it might have been better if they'd never been upgraded, because it breaks the illusion too much.
Yeah.
This is not one of those. Absolutely not one of those. Sometimes that's to effective comedy. I often talk about Savage Beach. The hilarity of that is the fact that they tried to do old age makeup by crinkling saran wrap on a guy's face and painting it gray, which is hilarious when you can see it in HD. It is fucking nonsensical. But this movie, I think, would benefit just because you'd be able to see what's going on a little better, because there's dark parts on the YouTube, where you can't really, because it's at night. They're shooting it in the dark. You can't fix that. So, and the soundtrack's great too. There's some woman, now I have to listen to the rest of her music. Her name was, what was her name? But she sings in the movie, and they clearly recorded it, I think, as far as I could tell, in the film as she sings. Great voice. What's her name? I'd never heard of the band that she's part of, but it's new wave stuff, and I like that stuff, so that's okay. Let's see. The soundtrack is Sue. It's SAAD. I don't know if that's Sue Sad or Sue Sod, whatever. And the next, American New Wave Band from LA, California. Her voice is incredible. So I'm going to be listening to the rest of her stuff.
Sue Sod.
Yeah, Sue Sod, and the next is the Wikipedia entry.
Oh,
and
man.
Then, yeah.
Yes, that's very...
Yeah,
the look. It's
yeah.
like Joan. It's like very Joan Jett.
It is
Joan Jetty. Yeah.
Yeah, but her voice is good. Like she's belting some shit out, and I was fucking like, oh wow, this is all right, man. So, yeah, I'll have to. And she did the theme song for Looker too, which I also liked a lot. I didn't know that, but yeah. Well, 78 to 86. So I'll be listening to that.
I will have to check her out as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Looker. Yeah, there it is. It just popped up.
Yeah. Which is another movie I think is great. That's another movie I'd recommend. When I did the review, I love that movie too. You can watch in a nice, clean copy. Sadly, can't watch this and that yet. I do hope at some point somebody does a good Vinegar Syndrome.
Now,
if you
know
ever
what?
listen,
there's still enough of us who grew up with VHS to enjoy it the way.
Well, like I said, the nice part about the YouTube thing is I've watched really terrible YouTube rips or uploads and borne with it because I was just interested in seeing the movie. But it really just made the movie almost unwatchable to anybody other than me.
Yeah, it depends on how bad it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, actually, what's not bad so much as the pictures, the audio. The audio, a lot of times, is so bad that you can't literally understand what they're saying. And that's worse to me than a bad picture when it comes to YouTube, is the audio can be so fuzzy and indiscriminate that you cannot tell what's being said. Fortunately, this one is on the better side, where it's the audio almost the whole time is clear. And you can, that's what I'm saying, even in this YouTube copy, which the audio was certainly, again, not high definition, this woman's voice was so good. I'm like, oh, I have to go listen to some of this because her voice is fucking incredible. So even in a not great format, I'm interested. And so anybody who's interested can watch it.
Go look for Suicide in the next.
Yep. And Prey, if you've never been interested, might be actually better than you think, because it has been for me. Radioactive Dreams is very fun. Across the Spider-Verse. When Lando told me it was good, I said, I expected it to be good. So I'm not surprised.
I didn't even get into how good the art is. So, I mean,
yeah, but it's the same team. So if you love the first one visually, you're going to like this one. And from what I've read, the Mutant Ninja Turtle movie is also great. I'm going to watch that once it's available, because that just sounds great, and I love the Ninja Turtles. So I will be reviewing that once it's available on VOD, probably in a month or two. And Guardians, good for people other than me. That's good. So no bad reviews, nothing negative in this particular episode, which is always nice to have. So go out there, have a wonderful weekend, and we will. Oh, and if you recognize the sound effect from the beginning of the show, because I almost forgot, even though we played it at the beginning, be sure to let us know what it is if you recognize it. So there is no prize outside of your own recognition that you recognize something that's extraordinarily nerdy and not recent. So congratulations if you remember it. Let us know. Talk to you all later. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow at Ozone Nightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.